Hello, I'm Mike Ryan. I'm the Chief Networking Officer at PIMS, and welcome to our second season of Minutes with Mike. Now in my 33rd year at PIMS, I've had the privilege of partnering with companies both large and small, supporting their PR and marketing through customized fulfillment and distribution that delivers measurable impact on their brand perception, boosts positive affinity, and fuels their overall brand performance. And throughout my career, I've had the chance to work alongside many talented folks. This is their story. On this show, we'll sit down with some of the world's top marketing and business thought leaders to learn more about their success, how they got there, how marketing helped them achieve their goals, what strategies they used, and what inspires them. Please join me on this journey as we learn from those who are changing the way we think about business. So sit back, enjoy. You're listening to Minutes with Mike. Welcome, everybody, to Minutes with Mike. Today's guest, very excited to have Mr. Josh Rangel on board. Josh, welcome to Minutes with Mike.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I am excited to be here.
I'm very excited because we've worked with Josh for years now, and certainly his teams on the PR end of things. But so excited because I've never seen somebody who can post something, which of course I laugh at every single time. I'm talking about through LinkedIn. Whatever it is, it's just witty, it's quick, it's on target, it's hysterical, but I literally watch those metrics of the likes just pick through. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in length and how you come up with those and all that. But let me say, Josh is a senior social media strategist and PR senior vice president. But tell us a little bit about you. I know you're a Chicago native.
Yeah.
I know you're a family man. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So as you said, I am a Chicago native, born and raised, still live in the city. And I have a wife and two young daughters that are keeping me young right now. So that's, outside of the professional life, the personal life of running around and trying to make sure that they're upright is a great and wonderful job. Yeah, they're phenomenal kids. And so, the family side keeps me busy, but, I came up through college and then got out of college and jumped into radio for that, doing promotions there. And then that kind of led me into kind of the marketing world of an internship at Edelman and to Golan, and kind of, I went on from there. And so, I studied marketing in college, and that kind of started me on my career path. But yeah, so born, raised Chicago, family man, social media guy. That's me.
I get out to Chicago often. I love that town. But one of the things I like to ask guests on Minutes with Mike when we're talking about with PIMS, it's all this customized influencer marketing that we're involved in, right? And it feels like forever now, but it is such a young industry. And when I say young, it's young in age and young in the amount of time that it's been really focused on asset in the marketing world. When I first started, Josh, I'm an old man. I'm 57 now. I know I don't look at it.
Young. You're young, man.
And when I first started, there was no influencers. It was all media driven: TV, radio, newspapers, magazine. This is how the PR community got the word out. We would send out 2-page press releases, typed on with typewriters on, maybe if you're lucky, you had color letterhead, but just sort of faux paper, and we'd print them, fold them, and send them out by the thousands. And that's how it went for a real long time until one day somebody called and said, two most important questions. One, do you guys have influencers? And we're like, influencers, what's that? And two, do you send out sample products? So I'm always curious, and you could tell us how it sort of evolved with you. You started with radio. What was the first time you kind of connected with influencer marketing or thinking like this was the new and up and coming thing? What sort of led you down that path?
Yeah. So like I said, I started in radio. I was in the promotions department. And so I was kind of the face of the radio. I was communicating directly with the listener. So it was kind of like, I'm doing public relations for this. And so that was, kind of my foray into going into a PR agency. And, I think influence has been around forever, whether it's celebrity, it's the person down the block with the cool car that you want to get. So like influence has always been around. And obviously from a marketing standpoint, as we know influencer now, I would say my first kind of experience with it was 2008. So we were doing a campaign for our client Klondike around what would you do for a Klondike bar contest. And we were working with the guys from the Lonely Island. So Andy Samberg from SNL, when digital shorts were all the rage. at that point. He had a couple of hits, viral hits there. And so they were creating videos for us for this contest. And part of our strategy was to go out to these people who were making YouTube videos. They weren't called influencers. They weren't even called YouTube creators. They were just called, they're the people who make videos on YouTube. Let's reach out to them to help us showcase how people can enter this contest. And so I started doing research on these YouTubers who were making their own videos, funny videos. And so did this research and said, hey, it was basically just like pitching media, except it was like, we want to pay you to do this, and this was the Wild West because we hadn't really done it. And so that was my first foray into influencer, like as it kind of is now. It wasn't really a standard industry then. And then fast forward maybe like 5-ish years later was when I first kind of had my first real influencer campaign with our Fruitari client. We were launching it was a frozen fruit bar, and we were launching that product in the United States, and we wanted to use influencers. That was part of our strategy, and it was one of the first in Unilever's kind of history at the time. And so we partnered with a handful of influencers. I remember reaching out to Liz Eswin, who runs at New York City, and just talking with her. I'm like, hey, you're this influencer. And she's like, she didn't even know really what the term was. Like she knew a little bit about it, but it was like so fresh that she didn't even consider herself that. So this is 11 years ago. But that was my first way into building an actual influencer strategy. And from there, it had been a part of pretty much the fabric of every campaign project that we have done for a client from an influencer standpoint. So it kind of grew from just YouTubers to a full-blown kind of strategy that we felt had to be involved with everything.
I know you've worked with a lot of the big companies, and just to name a few, McDonald's and Allstate, Unilever, Pepsi, General Mills, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
The focus with social media and from my perspective, right, I'm looking at it, and you could probably tell me a little bit more, is, they certainly want to have you engage their brands, but it's also about consumer retention, right? And the bottom line being sales, right? So dealing with different companies means you have different strategies, right? Different looks of how they want to do it, depending on who it is that's focused on the next thing for their company. They're going to want it done a little bit different. Tell me a little bit about how that strategy works internally in PR. Like, how do they help companies strategize, tell them no sometimes as they're telling them yes, but like, give me a little bit of background, a little peek behind the curtain on that.
Yeah. I think each client is bespoke in the way that we approach it, what their objective is, who their target is, and what it is they want to communicate. And so everything is about creating custom to that specific campaign, project, or brief, right? And so, part of what we try to do is, in looking at the brief that they give us, we interrogate the brief, right? And we make sure we understand it as PR professionals. And then from there, we kind of articulate it in a way that is going to make sense for PR. And depending on what the goal is, it could be awareness, like just awareness for a new product launch. It could be consideration. It could be purchase intent. It could be purchase sales in general. So we'll essentially build custom programs and strategies based on those particular objectives each and every time. It's not just a one size fits all thing. Everything should be specific and custom to what their objective is. And sometimes we will push back and say, you are not in the place of culture, in the ethos of the consumer to merit this campaign being a purchase driver or sales. You need to generate more awareness for where you are at in the consumer's headspace in order to get us to consideration, to purchase intent, to increase sentiment, and then down the line that the marketing, to get them to go through the funnel of everything. And so there are times where we have to push back. And I think one of the experiences I've had in my career is I've had a lot of great clients who have been collaborators and partners who are saying, we're partnering with you as an agency to help us make the right decisions and bring things to life. Obviously, some are different, some have different perspectives than others, but a lot of time they are receptive to that. And as long as we're hitting on ultimately what their objective is in the long run, a lot of times they're receptive to that pushback. But for me, I always, especially if you're a younger brand, a brand like McDonald's, you don't need awareness. Everybody knows who you are. But a smaller brand, maybe a more like regional brand, or if you're just launching, you need to do a little bit of legwork before you can get to that purchase intent and purchase. So a lot of times, though, that counsel is, hey, let's focus on awareness and consideration and sentiment engagement, those types of things. And then we'll work our way towards these other things. So that's kind of been the process.
So I've worn many hats here at PIMS. I'm a salesman, right? But I'm also in the networking end of things. And networking means that you have to engage potential and current clients, right? We deal with partners, but we do a lot of event strategy. And those three letters of the acronym ROI is all about, the feedback you get when we're planning these events on my end, right? So ROI, I'm sure, is really important when strategizing for these types of outreach, right? So you base it, I'm assuming, on a lot of analytics and metrics and data and that sort of stuff. And I know, there's a lot of big companies out there or companies that are growing that offer these types of ROI information.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit on your end, like if you're working in-house, do you guys develop your own programs to create that sort of analytics for information to go back to your client, or do you outsource it? Is it a mix of the two? Does the client come back to you and say, here's the expectations on what we want to see in those metrics? I know that you probably have to make certain allotments of things that they want to see, but how do you report back?
Yeah, great question. Every project, program, campaign, what have you, starts with, obviously, we're dissecting the brief, going into that. But then before we kick off any sort of program, as we're building strategy, tactical plan, creative, that type of thing, as we land, kind of that becomes a little bit more clear on what those are. Then we're setting those KPIs and metrics based on what the objective is, right? So every campaign, every project will have associated KPIs and measurement that we're trying to hit. So we will typically, as an agency, do that internally. That all, like setting those KPIs, making sure we're measuring and analyzing them, that is all set in-house. But as you said, sometimes the client wants to dig a little bit deeper on the ROI, and so for those types of things, there might be a scenario where we want to do a brand lift study, right, to see how much impact this particular campaign, this series of content, what it made. Did it lift purchase intent? Did it increase brand sentiment? Did it increase share of voice over a particular competitor? So in those instances, we'd likely partner with kind of some third-party folks to help us get that particular data. If it's simply data, we want to make sure that we were doing a little bit more share of voice, we can probably do that internally. But when it comes to some of those like brand lift studies, typically you're looking at partnering with a third party to help you get kind of that thing. And in some instances, you're working with a company like that to kind of make a proprietary setup within the agency to make sure you can kind of have that tool set within your kind of tech stack, and making sure that you're able to kind of deliver those types of results. But yeah, whether it's purchase intent, increase in sentiment, awareness, those types of things, or if you're looking at an influencer campaign, sometimes it's CPM, CPE, which you can kind of measure those. Clients are looking at kind of what is that return, and a lot of times we'll set those benchmarks at the outset and then analyze them on the back end to make sure they worked. And obviously, you do kind of a review at the end to make sure you find out what learnings there are and kind of what you can do, what insights you can glean from them to kind of improve moving forward.
I wanted to ask you about budgets, but as I was preparing my question, something you said triggered another question in my head. Thanks for that plug, Ray. I appreciate it.
It's good. It's a good one.
Clients sometimes, and especially in the social media world, don't always know what's best, right? But they think they do. We deal with clients a lot on our end that have a feeling that they should do something like this, and it's our job to sort of deliver that bad news on occasion. What do you go by gut instinct with that? Like if somebody's coming back to you as a client and says, well, we kind of like what you did here, but could you do something like this? And you just know it's not for them. Is there any kind of like, what's the work through with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what a little bit about being partners with the client and true partners with the client. And, I think for agencies, we do ourselves a disservice if we are yes people, because the agencies are coming to us for our experience and for our counsel and to help them make a particular thing better or to increase awareness or whatever that job to be done is, to be their counselor. And so I think a lot of times for me specifically, and other friends that I have in the agency world, a lot of the stuff we probably think of immediately comes from our gut. We have years and years of experience, that has helped us formulate internal data about certain things. We've been in the same position before, or we've had a similar kind of ask from a client before. So we have kind of our internal gut data telling us certain things. But there are also some points where we do have more time to kind of take a beat and actually assess some things a little bit more. That's when we're going to dig into some of that real data, right? Of like, hey, we actually dug into this for you. If you do this, here's what we're seeing could be the result. If you don't do this, here's the other side. So, a lot of times if they're asking like, we need to make a gut decision, we need to make a decision now, a lot of times they're paying for our experience in our decision making based on what we've already done and been through. So sometimes you do have to make those gut decisions based on your experience, but other times when you do have a little time to plan, and you don't always get that in the PR world and marketing,
no time
yeah,
in PR
yeah,
world.
right, yeah. You use data, real external and data that you do from a research standpoint to kind of help make those truly informed decisions. Yeah, and there have been instances where the client has come to us like, hey, we have 2 weeks to make a decision on something like this. Come to us with some data to help us. Or it's like, hey, I need to send this to the CMO in 25 minutes and I need a quick POV. So it balances out, Mike. It balances out.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you about budgets, but you kind of answered that question too. I'm assuming that all ties into it too with that strategy that you deal with the client with. That's how you work out the budget. They want you to come in as low as possible. There's a certain amount of spend you need to do, and you kind of work that out.
Mm-hmm.
Was that correct? Would you agree?
Yep, basically. Yep.
I wanted to ask you about your posts, right? So if you're not following Josh on LinkedIn, and I was going to ask you about some of the other sources that you post on, but I follow you on LinkedIn. If you're not following Josh on LinkedIn, as I opened up with earlier, he has, it's always on my end, at least, if I'm having like a horrible day, it pops up and in a minute, I'm smiling. Sometimes I'll even shoot a quick message back to him saying it was right, spot on, funny, hysterical, whatever it is. But it makes you think. It's always something that's inspiring in the way of it's an issue or concern of the day, but spun in such a way that it is very tied in sense of humor, ties in with that overall viewpoint, and it's just wonderful. I also, before I ask you about the post, I did some math, which is not my forte, but I looked at 3 featured posts you did, and the average amount of likes was 1,000. This is the average amount of likes, 1,874 likes on LinkedIn. And the average amount of comments was 203. Josh, I think one time I posted something and I got like 96 likes and I couldn't sleep that night. And I think I got like 11 comments, and I'm like, I'm the most popular guy in the world. Like, tell me again, like, how did that start? Like, how do you grow your network? How often do you post? Is it just something you think of? Does somebody say something to you that makes you think? I know we follow a lot of common people. I think I checked that too. We have 280 common mutual, and I know you often like other people's posts that I think are in that same world as you. But tell me how that grew. How did you develop that?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And 96 likes is really good, Mike, by the way. It is. Most people, hey, you're doing more than 90% of the people on LinkedIn because they just don't post. So thank you for that. But I would say a lot of I started with Twitter really heavy, like when it first started, or back in 2008. And I was consistent for the most part, and then started being more consistent there. And then probably around the time when COVID hit, when we started all everybody was working from home and all those things. I enjoy working with my colleagues and being the energy that I get from them and collaborating with them in person. And I miss that a lot. And so part of my creative outlet was starting just to write. And I was always writing on Twitter, and I had been active on LinkedIn, but I was doing just more like, basically updates and posts here and there, nothing like really meaningful behind it. And then, so I would, for lack of a better word, and you can bleep this out, I would shit post on Twitter a lot, right? And I would share industry things, but I would shit post and do actual, here's a piece of advice in social or whatever. And so I'm like, I'm going to see if this works on LinkedIn because I don't really know what else other to post, really, I want to be me. And so I started, posting kind of quick hits. Then I got a little bit more funny and posted some memes, and I started to get a little bit of traction. People started to enjoy that kind of thing, and it seemed to resonate. And so I kind of just said, I'm going to be me on this. I'm going to be a professional. I'm not going to go crazy, but at the same time, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with the industry that we are all in. And so I just started kind of going with that, and the reaction was really positive. And so for me, what my kind of thinking was if I can post things that are relatable with a little humor, that offer a little bit of education or insight into our industry, that's kind of my trifecta of things I can like. Doesn't have to check every box, but it just gave me a creative outlet during that time when I wasn't in the weeds with my colleagues in person, right? We were remote, but it gave me a way to kind of just like have an outlet from a creativity standpoint. And it's worked. And a lot of my insights come from my personal experience, whether that is, 2 days ago or from when I first started in the industry, right? So it's not necessarily something that had happened to me recently, but it could have been something that happened, 5 years ago that I'm remembering that is still a thing. Some of them I pull from just the community I follow. I follow a lot of folks in the social media community, and I see some of the things that people who are teams of one or, teams of 10, some of the commonalities that they have about how people view social media teams. So I pull from their experience too, to share like, hey, this is what this community and these people kind of experience. And I want to raise a little bit of awareness for those folks and shine a light that social for brands is important. And it's a real job that shouldn't require you to do 18 different jobs with it. So that's kind of where I've been with it. And, I found a niche, and I think I wrote a post about like more memes, less memos on LinkedIn, because I think you should be yourself on LinkedIn, be professional, sure, share those things, but also be yourself. And what I like to do is try and share things in a relatable way, in a humorous way that also maybe can teach somebody something here and there.
Well, let me tell you again, I've hyped it up a lot, but it's true that you 20, years of experience in the PR world, you're definitely a wordsmith, but you marry them with the most authentic, perfect imagery, right? Whether it's a quick video or a static image, it's always spot on. Do you find, I don't follow you on Instagram or TikTok, YouTube or any of that stuff, but like, do you find you have the same success if you post XYZ on all of those channels? Do you get the most success through LinkedIn, would you say?
So the way I do my personal social is I use LinkedIn, Threads, and to a more limited extent now Twitter as kind of my professional shit posting playground, if you will. I test the things, and I usually use Instagram and like Instagram for more like personal kind of like family, friends, that kind of stuff. I'll do more share memes and stuff in stories there. But it's usually a little bit more on like sharing more stuff for my family, so my mom can see my daughters and stuff like that, that kind of stuff. And TikTok, I am starting to do like more like CapCut style, like memes and things like that to just kind of get it out, just get more experience with the video aspect of things. But I usually am using Threads now as kind of like, and I would do the same thing to a certain extent with Twitter, as kind of, that's my testing ground. If I can get some traction there, if I'm getting resonance there, I feel like it's probably going to work well with the social media community on LinkedIn. So I usually will play around. And sometimes I inverse it. Sometimes I start on LinkedIn if I have an idea and I just quickly go and write it and post it. And I'll post it a similar version or like a streamlined version to Threads or to Twitter. So I like to use Twitter and Threads as testing grounds a little bit to see what could potentially work. And if I'm getting some feedback, like, or maybe I should tweak a word here and there, and then maybe I put it on LinkedIn. So that's kind of my approach from that standpoint.
I have 4 grown children, and they make fun of me because I'm addicted to reels, right? Like,
okay.
I go on YouTube and I can watch, a 20, 30-second reel all day long. They're funny, they're good. They, movie clips from movies nobody ever heard of. I'm sending them to my sons.
Yeah.
They're like, every time they respond to me, they're like, this guy loves reels. What are your thoughts on the reels and the stories? Like, it's not new, but is that something that's sort of attracting a lot of attention as of late?
Yeah, I think with any thing from a platform standpoint, they're prioritizing video, right? I think reels, TikToks, those type of things, and YouTube Shorts, they're prioritizing short form vertical video, and it's been that way for years. Like I've been in social for so long, and like the pivot to video started 12 years ago. It's a long pivot. And so now this vertical 90 seconds or less, even, sometimes, 15 seconds, what have you. Those are the things that are going to be successful. But I think one of the things that has kind of come from a real standpoint and other TikTok videos is just to what you just said is sometimes just taking those movie clips and just shortening them down and adding a like relatable thing about parenthood or about friendship or about something equating those resonate. Those are the things that people share, and those are the things that people share with each other in stories, right? And DMs, which is why you see Instagram saying we're focused on direct messaging and reels and those types of things, because that's where we see most of the shares going on, which is why you see a whole bunch of people now complaining about not getting any sort of organic traction in Instagram feed, because like literally I could scroll Instagram feed and I could like 10 videos. I'd probably follow one account in that time. So, I mean, obviously you can switch to the people you're following feed, but so they've really prioritized that type of thing because it's quick, it's relatable. You don't have to think about it. And your buddies probably, and my buddies and I do it all the time. Like we see this video, of like these memes that people are creating out of movie clips or TV show clips, and we're sharing them in our stories and DMs and stuff like that. So I think it's just just how the human behavior is, and from whether it's text messaging, group chat type thing, or just direct messaging. I think you're seeing a lot of people sharing those videos that they relate to with people who they know are relating to them as well.
Consumers, I think, are getting a lot more hip as to what it is they look for to social media aspects of their brands. Tell me about paid versus social, and just naive to this, so you can educate me. Is paid more like the advertising of old, right, versus organic? I'm sure there's different strategies that to go into each one, but like when you're strategizing with a client and they don't really know what the difference is between paid and organic, and they're leaning one way or the other, like what would you say some of the nuances there are? What are the pluses and minuses of either side?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, I think that paid and organic social work better together. They do complement each other, right? I think you're talking about organic is that brand building, brand awareness, getting close to the customer, that engagement, whereas the paid aspect is for that targeted reach that you're looking for to that target consumer who is really probably the most ready to buy at a particular point, and also to kind of continue expanding your messages to new audiences. And so when they work together, I think that that's important. I think one of the things from an organic social standpoint is that if it works in organic social, if it's earning attention and it's picking up steam without any paid, it's going to work in paid because you've already found something that works. And if you're getting in front of more people who are like that audience, there's a good chance they're going to like it. Now, if you're creating a paid ad that is really simply just for sales from a sales standpoint and putting that in organic, that's not going to work. So the other way around doesn't always work. But paid social is, to your point, it's getting in front of, why does a media buying agency buy a particular spot on ABC or NBC or now on Hulu or whatever, because they know that the audience that they're going after is in this particular area. And it's the same thing with paid social. You're creating a piece of content targeting to the audience that is on that platform. But what I think, some brands are more sophisticated than others and do a great job at this, but making sure the paid is social first versus just taking a TVC or a billboard or a static and just plopping it in and expecting it to do something. If you're going to be targeting people on social, if you're using paid social, make sure the content is social first. That, one of the best things that probably can, a customer can probably say, or somebody who sees an ad can probably say, I didn't even realize that was an ad, right? So, and that usually comes when it's social first, created, either it's UGC or organic that goes into paid. So yeah, like I said, I believe they complement each other. They both have their strengths, and you shouldn't sacrifice one for the other.
As we grow, you and I, in this world of ours, ever changing, right? And having your sort of eye on what's next is important, right? So, AI is now big and everybody's talking about that. sustainability was a big buzzword for a long time. Now that seems to be built into the foundational support of everything we
Mm-hmm.
do. People are
Yep.
always looking for these sort of trend patterns that they're setting forth. Give me your perspective on AI. I know it's not new, but it's new, and nobody knows exactly where it's headed. But everyone wants to get on board, has to get on board. How do you think that interacts with your world, the social world? Like, how is that going to develop as that grows?
Yeah. I was just actually having a conversation about this earlier today about AI, and I do think this is one of those things. I think AI is here to stay. I do not think it's going away. I don't think it's a fad. It's like when people were talking about like the metaverse and about NFTs and stuff like that a couple of years ago. I wanted to learn about them. I wanted to know about them. I wasn't convinced that the adoption of those things was going to be something that was going to be very quick. I thought that it still was very early and that our application of it from a marketing and PR social standpoint was still very, very way off. I don't, this is a personal thing. I don't think NFTs are a thing that are going to be a mainstream thing. Metaverse, I think down the line, I think we're about 10 years, 8 years too early for that. AI is here now and people are using it now. I think if you're not studying it, if you're not taking it seriously, you are going to be a little bit behind. Just thinking about the use cases for it now, like using just kind of Gemini or Chat GPT, the things that you can plug in to help you brainstorm, outline, summarize things. And that helps a social professional in a lot of ways. Like, look, I read an article. I might read an Adweek article that's, a 6-minute read. I'm like, I really don't have a lot of time for that. Let me plug this into ChatGPT. Give me a summary and 5 bullet points takeaway that I can do. Boom, easy application that I can say I summarize. Obviously, with AI, you have to check the work in a lot of instances. So there's things you have to do, but it can help you outline a social calendar. It can help you outline kind of a to-do list and things like that. And one of the things I think is how it's going to impact not only a younger generation, but also the older generation, my parents' age, right? I've talked to my dad. This is a tangent, but I talked to my dad. I'm like, don't answer the call from a number you don't know first and foremost. But if it's me on the line, and I'm saying, Dad, I got kidnapped. I need you to wire money. That's probably a fake. It's an AI voice of me. They figured out. They watched Minutes with Mike. They got my voice. They were able to get my voice. And this is not real. So it's like, I think that there are implications from, we have to be careful with the use cases. But I do think it has implications with certain things. I don't think it's taking anybody's jobs right now necessarily, but how can you respond to, instead of having, a sea of customer service or community managers, maybe AI is something that can take over. So it might take some jobs down the line, right? But like, I think it's going to help social because it's going to help you brainstorm. I certainly do not think that anybody should be plugging in, how do I respond to this comment? Like, a social media manager should not be using AI to reply to people right now. I think there are applications like AI bots on chat forms and things like that. If you're going to a company's website, yes, to kind of help you get data B. But part of social is being social, being a person communicating with another. And community engagement, community management is one-to-one, person to person, not AI, person AI. So I still think that's a way off, but I do think some of the applications, whether it's helping you in your planning or analyzing results in certain instances of how you can story tell, I think there's a lot of use cases. Obviously, again, with you go into it knowing that it's flawed and you have to check the work, and I would never, ever, and you should not ever use AI, like copy and paste something and give it to a client, to your boss. No, use that as a starting point, as an outline to gather information and help you brainstorm things, and then take that information and formulate your own thing. Making sure you're putting your perspective, your creativity on it. But yeah, I do think AI is here. It's not just the future. It isn't the now. And I think brands and agencies and professionals in marketing, PR, social space would do well to study it and take it seriously.
That's such great advice. And as you're telling that story in my head, my son just graduated high school. He's off to St. John Fisher University in Rochester in the fall.
Right.
And there was, at the end of the year, the school offers you a bunch of these local scholarships, $50 here, $200 anyway.
Yeah.
He wanted to do like 30 of them. So I'm like, each one wants a little bit of an essay. He's like, well, what should we do? I'm like, well, my advice is maybe just use the same essay for both. And he kind of like shook his head. I'm like, no, I know we do. ChatGPT the question and they'll just give you the answer. A 17-year-old kid spun around to me and was like, Dad, this is in 1985, bro. Like, they got equipment that can smell that out. Plus, like, nobody knows. I don't use these words, so thanks, but no.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I got schooled in 2 seconds of the future of how this is going to work. But
The kids, man, the kids, they know.
And that's a good segue to my last question here. I wanted to ask you your advice to. I'm going to college. I'm going to be a PR strategist, I hope, one day. What advice would you give to that kid who's getting involved now? What's going to happen over the next 4 years and what he or she can expect coming into the world?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. One piece of advice I've always given to, like, and I've written about is, you just start, if you're just start doing things. And so if you're in college right now and you're wanting to be, a PR strategist, social media strategist, you have to start doing, because there's no substitute for doing the work. There's no substitute for experience. You can read all about it. You can study all about it. But if you're not getting your hands, dirty, for lack of a better phrase, if you're not actually experiencing it, it's a whole different ball game, because you could read about a PR crisis. You could read about pitching media. But I'll tell you, that feeling in your stomach when you're actually picking up the phone or call, like, that is a whole different experience, right? You have to learn about how to deal with that and how that impacts your performance in certain things. So you have to start doing, and whether that's practicing with a classmate or asking your professor for a particular project, or going into a small business and saying, hey, I'm a college student. I'm studying PR. I'd love to help you do this for not, if they want to do it just to get experience and do it for free, great. But if the small business has, like, hey, I'll pay you $100 to do it, great. But getting that experience is going to be so big. And I think with agencies now these days, and even kind of brands when you're going in-house, in order to get that first full-time gig, you have to have an internship. So if you're an undergrad, I would start thinking, if you're a sophomore now, I would start thinking about what that looks like for you. And it depends. Some agencies will still do undergrad, but in a lot of instances, you have to have the college degree to get that, because most internships are paid now, as they should be. And so you have to have that internship experience in many instances to get an agency. So I would start thinking about that as you are in school. And I've seen a lot more of this, and I'm heartened by it, but I see college students on LinkedIn. They need to be more I don't believe LinkedIn had started when I graduated college. I was just on the cusp of it coming to fruition when I was there. But I don't, when I was in college, I don't envision myself on LinkedIn. But now these young people are so sophisticated. But being on LinkedIn, engaging with people in the industry that you want to be in, is incredibly important. So engaging with their content, even engaging with folks in the industry you want to be in, is even just as important as creating content on your own. But to that point, create content on LinkedIn, write a perspective about the industry, write about your experience that you had with that pitching for that small business, or just kind of get out, repurpose an article or reshare something and add your perspective on it. But the more experience you get out there, the more your name's going to be out there. And agencies look at that. They'll look at your LinkedIn. They will look at the things that you've done. And so if you're engaging with folks in your industry, if you're already posting and creating things about the industry, you're going to have a leg up. And LinkedIn is also a treasure trove for you to be like, hey, this agency has a lot of people that are doing this. This agency just won this award and they're doing X, Y, Z. So it'll give you an opportunity to think about what agencies or brands or organizations you might want to target. But you have to start early, because it's so competitive at that level. So, making sure you get that experience in school. Getting that internship is critical to get into the agency, which agency sometimes is a springboard to careers in-house and things like that. So long story short, start doing, because that will prepare you for that internship interview, to getting that internship, to the work you're doing, to the next step.
That's great advice. Really well said. I would say the first step is to follow this guy on LinkedIn, because the stuff he comes out with changes everything. Josh,
Thank you.
if you're a connoisseur of Minutes with Mike, you know that we finish our episode with a little lightning round here. So I did not prep you on this, but these are this or that type questions.
Okay.
You just want whatever pops into your head first. Now, truth be told, a little transparency, I did look some of this up on ChatGPT, you tell me where we're going. Are you ready?
Dangerous game, but I'm ready.
Here we go. Instagram or TikTok?
Instagram.
Influencer collaborations or brand partnerships?
Influencer collaborations.
Engagement rate or follower count?
Whew, this is a good one. Engagement rate.
This one, I want to hear your answer. Dying for this one. When I wrote it down, I'm like, I want to hear this. Social media calendar or spontaneous posts?
Can I say both? For me, spontaneous posts. For brands, structure followed by a little bit of spontaneity.
Love it. Hashtags or no hashtags?
No hashtag.
I mentioned earlier you do both, but what do you prefer, video posts or static images?
Static images.
Live streaming or pre-recorded video?
Pre-recorded video.
And last but not least, here's a long one. Cross-platform campaigns or platform-specific strategies?
Platform-specific strategies.
Josh, you have been wonderful. I'm not surprised. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time. Thank you so much for your time and being a guest on Minutes with Mike. Great learning experience for me, for sure.
Thank you, Mike. Cheers.
I might need your help getting those 93 likes up.
I got you, man.